Yeah, after I started to come to terms with what my life looked like now, um, I came to the realization that I needed to make a few modifications to make things easier, make me stop acting like such an idiot. Because even after I realized that my life was not going to be the way that I wanted it to be anymore, and I got past the anger over that and everything, I was still doing things to myself without really meaning to, pushing myself beyond what I should. Because when you learn to ignore your pain level, like I did, like I do, you can get too good at ignoring it. And you can get too good at pushing through it. And that's what I did. I got to the point where I didn't necessarily know when my pain level was reaching up past a point where I was about to start hurting myself by accident. And so I was like, okay, thing number one, I probably need to get a cane for when I'm going to be walking longer distances, going to the mall or whatever. And then the second realization I made was I needed a canine assistant. I needed a service dog. Well, at the time that I originally came to this understanding and this realization, I had rescued this big blonde, um, 70-pound collie golden retriever chow mix, and he was so grateful and he was so devoted to me, and he had just gotten to the point where he understood and he realized that the world was not evil, and there were more people out there that loved him than wanted to hurt him, and that strangers were not a terrible thing. And it was at that point, that was around the same time that I came to the realization that I needed a four-footed helper. And he was all on board for that. He just wanted to be where the people were, and he wanted to be paid attention to, and he wanted to be important. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just teach you what I need you to know. And so I started working on that. And then it was in the process of that that I realized that my dad needed him more than I did. And so it was at that point that he became my dad's service dog, not mine. And it was a good thing that he was my dad's service dog, because I don't think that dad would have lived anywhere near as long as he did. I'd always assumed that he would be gone by 2005, 2006. Actually, probably before that. I was figuring he was not going to stay around that much longer, because he was a polio survivor. Um, yeah, I'll go further into that in another video. Um, but yeah, he just needed a lot of love and a lot of help, and he wouldn't really accept it from people. But he let Bandit help him. And without Bandit, we would have lost him at least 5 years sooner. So I was glad to have done that for him. Problem was, I still needed a service dog. I wasn't, I was still really, really new at this stuff, and I was still super green, and I knew that mobility dogs existed. I knew the general idea of how they were trained. I knew how they were raised. I knew what I needed to look for in temperament and intelligence level and all of that, but I wasn't really sure where to source one. It's like, should I go to the pound? But then again, when you go to the pound, you're not necessarily, you don't know what that animal's history is. So I needed a dog that I knew its history. And well, one of my buddies just happened to have had her dog snuck out again and came back pregnant again. And she just had the litter that she snuck out to have. And there was two that seemed to be ideal as far as uh, manner and intelligence level and how interested they were in people. But most of Goldie's puppies tended to be very people oriented and very intelligent because Goldie was a super smart dog. Um, and so I asked her if there was one or two that might suit my needs. And she was like, well, she told me which ones were the ones that were most likely. And I went and I picked one, and that ended up being Ember. I never realized or expected how vital a part of my life Ember would become. I never expected, I never realized what that bond between handler and service animal was, what it became, how it transcends a typical human animal bond. And I didn't really realize until I lost her September 6th last year exactly how deep that bond goes. Losing her broke my heart. But getting her and having her saved my life. She kept me out of a wheelchair. You wouldn't think a little 30-pound thing could keep this 200 plus pound human from being a dumbass. But she understood what I needed better than I did. She understood that I needed somebody to regulate me outside of myself and to stop me from hurting myself by accident and to be there when the pain level got too high. To remind me that there's something outside of it. There's something more. Because she would remind me to take my pain meds when she noticed that my pain level was starting to spike up past a certain point. And she would let me know I needed to take my meds. And then we'd go lay down and she would lick my face while they kicked in. because being autistic, I experience a thing called sensory processing disorder. It's really a major misnomer, um, because it's not a disorder. It is simply the fact that my brain processes certain senses differently. And pain is one of those things that my brain amplifies. And it can send me into a thing called sensory overload, which can in turn send me into a thing called called a meltdown. And sensory overload sucks, and meltdowns suck more, because a meltdown looks like a temper tantrum, but it is not. It is a release of what is too much, and it has to run its course. And you can't stop it, and you can't distract from it, and you can't. Once it starts, you have to write it out. And sometimes the pain will trigger me to go into sensory overload, and it will throw me into a meltdown. And one of the things that Ember did that she was very good at was she would lay there with me and she would lick my face, and she would um, help keep me focused and help keep me centered. And she would remind me that, hey, it's okay. You're okay. And she was so good at that. Well, I met my husband, Colby. Um, see, I got her, she was almost 3 months old in March of 2009. She was born around New Year's of 2009. And I met Colby first in September of 2009. First time I met him, it was just in passing. It wasn't really oh, I should date you. I should learn more about you. It was just hi, bye, moving on. And then about a month later, I one of our mutual friends was having a birthday party for one of their kids, and he needed a ride, and she needed to be able to get the party set up for her kid. And so she dropped him off over at my house, and we ended up spending that whole day together. And then we ended up spending the entire next day together. But that first day that we spent all day together, after the party, we went back to my house and hung out, and we were watching TV and movies and stuff. And Ember came inside, and she was still pretty fresh into trying to figure out what she needed to do to help me, and she was still kind of in puppy mode because she wasn't even a year old yet. And she really didn't like strangers coming into her space, her territory. She was fine with going out in public, going to Walmart and whatever, and seeing strangers out on the street or in public. That was fine. But strangers coming into our house, No, no, we don't do that. That's not okay. And always before had gotten, she would go hide and she would just not interact with especially strange men in our house. And so this day that was the first day that we were together, that we were actually spending a lot of time together. Um, she would come and she would kind of peek in the room where we were, and then she'd kind of sneak off, and then she'd come back and she'd peek and get a little closer, and then she'd go do something else, and then she'd do it again and again, and every time she got closer, every time she got a little closer, and every time she got a little bit more closer, and just back and forth, back and forth. And then she got to where she was like sitting next to him, near him. And then she wasn't sure, but she kind of was, but she kind of wasn't. It's like she thought she wanted something, but she wasn't sure. And then she got to the point where she jumped up and was sitting in my lap, and that was okay, and she felt safe. And then we were watching a movie, and by the end of the movie, this is a 4 hour time span from when she was doing her. Do I want to? I don't know. Do I trust him? I don't know. Is he okay? I don't know. By the time that that movie was over and that 4 hours had passed, she was in his lap getting tummy scratches from him, something that she never, ever did with people she didn't know, especially men she didn't know. She never did that, but she did that with him within 4 hours of meeting him. I mean, she wasn't really a fan of men she did know coming into our house, but there was something different about him. And she basically, furry little matchmaker that she was, she told me, for all intents and purposes, Mommy, this one. This is the one you need. This one. Well, I think she was right. 2009 to now. But yeah, she spent 13 years, her 13 years of life, every single day. She made that choice to continue to help me. And she spent 13 years doing everything that she could come up with to try to make my life better. And she did. I just, it's impossible to put into words what that bond is like. Because you go everywhere with them. You go everywhere with them. They go places dogs aren't allowed to go. Because according to the law, a service dog isn't a pet. They are considered living medical equipment. And because the law views them as such, if you can take a cane or an oxygen tank or an inhaler somewhere, that live medical equipment can go too. So she got to go in restaurants and grocery stores and Walmart and the craft store because yeah, the craft store is important to life. Uh, Crafting is life because yeah, crocheting saves lives and more yarn. uh, Sorry, I can't stay serious for very long at a time because it burns energy that I don't have. But yeah, you go absolutely everywhere that with them. You're with them all day and all night, every day of their life. And when you spend that much time with any being, your husband, your child, your parents, they worm their way so deep inside of you. It's physically painful when they have to go away. We found out that she had cancer the Friday before we lost her. So, September 3rd. September 1st, she had started having seizures. We didn't know. Well, I work with a young man who's nonverbal autistic and epileptic. So I know what seizures look like. I know what that is. I know what it looks like. And I knew what it was when I saw it. But the thing was, she'd never had seizures before. Not ever. So it was real weird when she just all of a sudden started having these seizures. But no, but having worked with my client for as long as I have, I knew, hey, there's medications we can use. This is potentially a medicatable problem. No big deal. I mean, yeah, seizures suck, and yeah, they are scary, and all of that. But I was like, I understood what I was looking at, and I understood what I was dealing with, and I did what I could do until we could get her into the doctor, and we got her into the vet, and let's see, the September 1st, she had two seizures within an hour of each other. Didn't have any more that night. Didn't have any more during the day that next day. And then that the evening of the second, she had four within a 3 hour time span. And so I had been waiting to get her into our regular vet. But at that point I was like, okay, we need to hit a vet's office that can get us in sooner, that we can just walk in and they can help us with her. And so we did that, and there's a vet's office, a very lovely vet's office that's um, within 5 minutes of my mom's house. And so we took her there, and Red Bridge Animal Clinic. We got her in there. They took her in the back, and they were like, "Leave her with us. We will see what we can find out, and we'll get in touch with you once we've had a chance to look her over and see what's going on." I was not expecting them to call 3 hours later and tell me and ask me if they could run some blood work and tell me based on what they were seeing without the blood work, it was possible she had cancer because her spleen was significantly enlarged. And I was like, yeah, go ahead and run the blood work. I was prepared for them to run blood work, so I was like, okay, go ahead, do it. Because I didn't care how much it cost. I was going to pay whatever it cost. She'd spent her whole life taking care of me. I could take care of her now. That was fine. I was okay with that. And they called back, and her red blood cell count was in the toilet. Her white blood cell count was in the toilet. I mean, it barely registered on the test. And her reticulate count, that's your baby red blood cells. That was in a decent range. So it's like, well, if we can support her until her baby red blood cells can repopulate her red blood cells, it might be okay. I know they knew when they were telling me that it was extremely unlikely. But they were trying to give me hope because I needed hope. And they knew just as much as I did that when spleen cancer gets as advanced as it was in her, um, by the time you find it, it that it's too late. They knew that. Intellectually, I knew that, but my heart wasn't listening at that time, um, because I didn't want to lose her, and I couldn't. I couldn't deal with the idea of losing her. Not in that moment, not at that time. So I had 3 more days with her. September 6th. I came to work. I knew I was only going to be working for an hour or so because I was only going into work that morning. Um, because my client's mom needed somebody to sit with my client while she took the other two kids to school. So I came just long enough for her to be able to do that and grab some breakfast. And then she came home, and I went back to my mom's house. Um, we'd all we'd all stayed the night at mom's house, the evening of September 5th, going into the 6th, because we had something else that sucked going on that morning as well. Of course, we didn't know that there was the thing that we were prepared for that sucked, and then there was the thing that we didn't know was going to happen that sucked. So yeah, we were over at my mom's house getting ready to go do the thing that sucked that we knew was going to happen that morning. And I went back after I finished working here, and Ember had been back behind my mom's chair where she liked to hang out. She liked to go back there and take naps and stuff. And so she was back there where she was happy and comfortable, and where she liked to be. And that's where she'd been when I left to come to work. And that's where she was when I got back, except when I left, she'd been over on her side. She'd been laying on her side, sleeping. But by the time I got back, she'd managed to roll herself upright sternal. Um, and apparently that was the last thing that she was able to make her body do. Because by the time I got back and I came and checked on her, because I was going to try to get her to go outside to go to the bathroom, I noticed that there was something really wrong. And her breathing wasn't right, and she wasn't responding like like she always had. And she was acting like she couldn't move. And so I moved stuff out of the way so that I could get back where she was. And she was looking around trying to figure out what was going on. And when I went back there where she was, she rolled her eyes up. She tried to look at me and she couldn't because she couldn't pick her head up. So I picked her head up for her. And when I picked up her head, there was no muscle tone at all. And in that moment, I knew what was going on. I knew. And when I picked her head up so that I could look at her and look her in the eyes and see what was going on, she just locked eyes with me. Help me. I don't understand what's happening. Help me. That's what her eyes said. She was more than my best friend. She was my lifeline to the world. And she was leaving me because her body couldn't do it anymore. She didn't want to go, but she couldn't stay. And the breathing and the lack of muscle tone and the inability to move her own body as she wanted, I knew what that was. Her body was shutting down. She was actively dying. And I knew what we needed to do. So I went downstairs and I woke up my sweet, beautiful husband. And I told him, well, before we do the thing that sucks this morning, we've got something else to do that sucks. And then I told him it's him. And he knew what I meant. He knew what I meant. He knew she was leaving. And he knew we needed to help her. And then at first he was like, no, I can't do this. I can't do that today. I can't do that today. I can't. And I was like, well, we don't have a choice. Because she's going to leave today one way or another. Either we can help her and we can make this easier for her, or we can let her continue to be confused and go out with confusion instead of peace and love. So he got ready, and I went back upstairs and we started getting Ember ready to go. There's a picture I've got. I'll post it up here in a second. When I edit this together, I'll post it up. And so yeah, we took her to the office that had diagnosed her with the problem that we'd all missed. All of us, me, my mom, my husband, our regular vet, all of us missed it. We missed it because she hid it from us. The only reason why the vet at the at Redbridge was able to pick up on it was she was too sick to hide it. That's the only reason he was able to feel the mass. Because every time she went for checkups with Dr. Abby at State Line, every time Dr. Abby would try to feel her abdomen, feel her belly, see what was going on inside there, she'd tense her tummy up so that you couldn't feel a damn thing. And actually, after they'd given her some fluids and some treatment to perk her up a little bit, when they tried to go back and re-examine her, she was doing well enough at that time because they'd given her a whole bunch of fluids and stuff to kind of help her perk up and bulk up a little bit. She was feeling well enough that she did the same thing that she always did to Dr. Abby, and she tensed her belly up and he couldn't feel anything anymore. So the only reason why we found out that she was dying before she died was I noticed what was going on, that something wasn't right was happening, and she was, when we took her in, she was too sick to hide it. Ember was always protecting me. She always was trying to protect me. And she tried very hard to protect me from her death. I know she knew she couldn't, but she tried to. Stubborn little, tough little, fuzzy asshole dog. She was an ornery thing when she was a puppy. Mom called her Goat Dog because she caused all manner of havoc when she was a puppy. And so Mom nicknamed her Goat Dog because she pulled the vent cover off of the dryer vent that happened to be venting out into the dog yard. I still don't know how she did this. She pulled the linoleum in the laundry room up from the middle. Not from the edges where it was already peeling up. No, from the middle of the floor. I have no clue how she managed that. She would unbend the chain link with her mouth to go on wanders around the neighborhood. Usually the only time that she would escape is when she thought that I needed her and she felt like she needed to come find me because I needed her and she needed to be with me because I needed her. But yeah, silly dog. I loved her more than life. I still do. I've had people tell me, people who also have service animals, say that the bond between a service dog and their handler is similar to what a married couple experiences, a very closely bonded married couple. And I believe it because that day that we had to take her to say goodbye, when I had to leave that office without her knowing that I would never kiss her furry little head again, I felt like somebody had removed my heart and my lungs with a spoon and still wanted me to keep going. It just hurt that much. And I've heard people who have lost their spouse say similar things. So yeah, I totally believe that. Why am I one tough chick? I've been through all of this plus some more, and I'm still here. Even with the moments that the pain was to the point where unaliving myself sounded like a great plan. Well, the 10 years that I have been married to Colby, we moved to Kansas City from Bartlesville. Pardon me. This is very indelicate. I should have had some Kleenexes handy because I knew what I was going to be talking about. Um, but neither one of us could find work in Oklahoma because right to work. What a load of hogwash and horse shit that is. It doesn't give the workers any rights. It gives all the rights to the employers. Oh yeah, you can quit without having to give notice. Yeah, that's bullshit. Yeah, you can do that, but your potential employer or your employer can you, and they don't have to tell you why. They don't have to give a reason. Whereas before they did, and they couldn't get away with discrimination the way that they can in Oklahoma now because right to work. So we moved to Kansas City, where my mom lives, 2014, and we started trying to build a life up here, and we did. And I was able to find work up here. First job I had working up here, it's just as well that that didn't last any longer than it did because I would have destroyed my body. And then I spent a little bit of time doing temp jobs and what have you, and that didn't work out very well, and that didn't last. And then I started looking for something that could potentially be long term. And then I found my dude. And people are like, "Oh, but he's nonverbal. That means he's not interested in anything, and he has no interest, and he's not smart, and whatever." No, that's bullshit. Um, that man, I can call him that man now because he's going to be 19 in October. So that man, he is his sense of humor is kind of dark sometimes, but he's as smart and funny and quick as anybody that you'd think anybody quote unquote normal. And he's plenty smart. He can outsmart me sometimes. He has outsmarted me more times than I can count. So yeah, I met Colby, and then he helped me learn about focusing on the positive. He helped me learn about letting go of those things that I can't do anymore. Oh, yeah, I can walk. I can totally walk. I shouldn't be able to walk, but I can, and I do. I know my time with that is limited, and I'm on borrowed time at this point. But I'm gonna enjoy the party for as long as I can. And I know sooner or later the party's gonna end, and I'm gonna have to pay up, and well, that's not gonna be fun. But look, I have a husband, I have kids, I have a job, I have a boss that is super cool. She understands my physical disabilities. She understands my autism. She understands that I have problems sometimes. But she absolutely loves me. And I love her and her son and her other kids. And now she's become a permanent part of our family because she's in a serious relationship with my husband's bestest best friend. And that is looking like it's going to be a permanent thing. And her younger kids love him to death, which is awesome. And my dude loves him to death. So yeah, I wouldn't wish this on anybody in the world, but it's possible to live a decent life in spite of it. You just have to figure out how to get past the anger and the hurt and the frustration that losing the life that you thought you had, that you thought you were going to have. You have to get past that. And you have to get past the hurt and the anger about it because you can't move on to living a decent life until you do. You can't find the happy life until you do. Or at least I couldn't. But yeah, if you or somebody you know goes to the doctor and gets diagnosed with sciatica, and they're saying that it feels like their hip is out of joint, or there's this traveling electrical fire pain going up and down their leg from their hip to their toe, because where your sciatic nerve runs, it branches off just above your pelvis and travels back down the back of your leg, starting at your buttock, going all the way down to your toes. It goes down to your big toe. That's where it ends out. And so you can feel traveling shooting pain, fiery pain, running from your hip all the way down and all the way back up. In fact, when my nerve pain is flaring, that's what it'll do. It'll go all the way down to my toe and come all the way back up. And it just goes in waves, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's literally like power surges up and down my leg. It's absolutely freaking horrible. But I'm tough. I can take it. I'm still here. Ain't nobody gonna stop me. Not even me. But yeah, I love y'all's. If you know anybody that's having those problems, make them go to the doctor. Hook them up with a neurologist. Hook them up with a chiropractor. Don't just let it go on. Because if you do, you'll end up like me. And this is not a fun life. It is a life, and I've figured out how to make it a decent life. But it's not fun. Because those days where I can't even walk to the bathroom hardly, yeah. And the fact that I have to use disposable diapers, disposable underwear, yeah. Nerve damage at that level, it affects a lot of things that are not fun. I can't feel when my bladder's full some of the time. And that's embarrassing. But yeah, use this information and use it to make your life better. I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next one.